Man, I wanted just to start off this morning. I want to be speaking on long-lasting faith. But what I want to do before I open up is I kind of want to get the elephant out of the room. How many of you know that 2019 was 2019? Am I the only one that feels that way? How many felt like 2019 was 2019? Like you're like, yeah, like it was a year that was a year, right? Anybody relate to that? Anybody from the back all the way to the front? Anyone relate to that? It was kind of like this year that had I felt like the ups and downs of 2019 were equal. Would you agree with that? Am I the only one in here that feels that way? How many of you felt like the ups and downs of 2019 were pretty equal? How many felt like the downs were a little bit more higher than the ups? How many of you still feel like that? How many of you guys have like you're like kind of traumatized coming into the new year? You're like, I don't really want to celebrate the new year because of this last year. I mean, this year for us was incredible. There's a lot of things to celebrate. I mean, this was a year, my wife got pregnant. I contributed a little bit. This is a year we celebrated 5 years of marriage. My wife and I got ordained this past year. We got into this amazing facility this past year. Our team grew. We got more campuses reached this year, and we began to we birthed what is now this Monday morning gathering here. And so there was a lot of things to celebrate, and I felt like the blessing and the testing were equal to me in 2019. If I get a witness anywhere in the room, it was kind of this. For me, it was kind of equal. Like it was a year that embodied both victories and trials. There's been other seasons where I felt like my faith has just excelled. There's been certain years where I felt like, man, this was the greatest year. Like nothing went wrong. Everything was so smooth. All my relationships stayed intact. Everything was cool with my family. Like I felt like there's been years like that. There's been other years where my faith, was tested. There's been moments where I don't know if you've ever gone through this, where you've doubted even your faith. But this 2019 for me wasn't that kind of year. 2019 was the first year that I've ever experienced what I experienced, and it was the first time I ever felt like my calling was attacked. And it wasn't through any person, it was more of through what was going on internally in me. This was the first year where I actually began to question, am I called of God? This was maybe I'm the only one in the room that has gone through this, but I felt like this was the first year where I wasn't just getting hit with doubt that's kind of wavering. I was actually getting hit with flat out wanting to quit what I had been doing for 10 years. I don't know if anyone's gone through that this last year. If I just get everyone's focus here for me. And I'm not saying this so it fuels your doubt, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, that's me too, screw this, like I'm out of here. No. I am saying this because my longing this morning is that you would be so encouraged by the weakness that I've gone through. By this last year, man, if I'm just really honest, it was a great year. Man, I seen the power of God move. We've seen so many incredible things. But again, it was the first year where I thought, man, is being a missionary really what I want to do? Is doing all of this really, really worth it? And it's not like I was having these thoughts of quitting, but it's not like I had a backup plan. It's not like I had another job at like Guitar Center waiting for me. Like I was talking to the manager and I was going to go there, and I had nothing. I had no plan B. I had nothing else. I wasn't planning an escape route. It was just literally having these thoughts of like, man, do I want to keep doing this? And to be honest, I've been preaching now for about 11 years. And I started preaching about a year after I got saved, maybe even sooner. And I would say that this is probably the most challenging years that I've ever had to preach to both non-believers and believers. It almost seems like these last 5 years in our country, things have shifted. Where the areas, I don't know if you have felt this, it's both for good and for bad. I remember we were at Disneyland, and I've never thought this before. We were at Disneyland, and I was with my family, and I was thinking, man, like ministry's hard. Like, people are hard. And especially if you're wired like me, I want to please everybody. I'm wired like this. Anybody wired like that? Some of you are like, nope, I care less. Right? I am wired. The way God designed me is I genuinely care, even to the point where I lose sleep. I'm just like, I genuinely care, like man, about people. I've grown in that, right? I've went from just being kind of let's just do ministry, to really trying to love people as best as I can. And I felt like this year, I was at Disneyland, and we're walking with my family, and I'm like, man, this is hard. like One Voice and like high schools. And high schools is a mission field. If you've ever gone to high schools, it's the most unappreciative mission field, I think. Right? How many of you remember when you were a teenager? You're not saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, and we're giving away pizza and we're giving all these things and like no one says thank you. It's like, we say we do it all for the glory of God, but in reality, we do like to feel some sort of satisfaction, thankfulness. And I'm not saying that that's terrible, but man, like my heart was so checked this year, feeling like, man, I'm giving. And God, in moments where I'm weak, like I kind of want to say, it's like there was so many things my heart was going through. I'm at Disneyland and I'll never forget it. I'm sitting there and I'm feeling guilty too, because I'm like, man, I shouldn't feel like I want anything in return, like I should be doing this all for the jewels on my crown that I'm gonna see one day, I don't know how all that works, but I'm just kind of like, I'm sitting there, I'm feeling guilty, like I shouldn't be feeling this, I should have zero expectation over anybody, and I'm eating a cheese-filled pretzel. If you ever been to Disneyland, you would know a cheese. How many of you know those are the best pretzels, right? They're like the cream cheese and the regular cheese filled pretzels. And the best thing about our Disney trip this year was my mom and her husband went, and he's a baller, okay? So he's paying for everything. I'm like, honey, whatever you want, he's paying for it. I got like, I think I had 4 pretzels that day. I didn't even care. Like, it was like, man, whatever. And I remember I'm eating this, I'm sitting there, I remember where I was. I'm in like this pretzel stand area. Brandon would probably know because he has Disneyland memorized. But I was sitting in the pretzel place, and I'm this thoughts of like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And all of a sudden I start feeling like the pretzel's agreeing with me, like, yeah, like you shouldn't be doing this. Like, and then I have this thought of like, you know what? I'm just gonna come work at Disneyland. I had this thought. I'm not kidding. It would be the greatest Disneyland, every Disney, every nation. Like I would take over, like. But I was sitting there, I'm eating this pretzel, and I felt like the pretzel was agreeing with me, like, yeah, like you could be eating me every day. Like I feel so stupid. When I was writing this morning at like 1 in the morning and 2 in the morning, I wanted to be real honest with just kind of what this last year was for me. It was one of these years where I'm sitting there, I'm talking to a pretzel, and I'm just like, man, I don't want to do this anymore. And what concerned me the most, if I'm really honest with you, about 2019, wasn't my doubts. It wasn't my areas of wanting to quit. It was how easy it was now for the enemy to want me to quit. It was almost like where years back, it was like he would throw everything he had, fear, doubt, temptations, all these things. And it was just a pretzel. It was like sitting there, I'm like, this pretzel looks so much better than the call of God in my life. Like, and I'm like, what has happened to my faith? To where the devil doesn't even have, my wife was reading this book and she was sharing, like, do you realize that the devil's army hasn't multiplied since the beginning of time? It's not like the demons are having babies and Satan has this big family. It's like the devil's not multiplying, yet his schemes are. How does that even work? How do you never multiply your army, yet your army continues to grow? I'm just going to leave that in your own mind. You can figure that out, talk it out with your families. But I was thinking, like, man, like, it took a lot more to knock me out like 8 years ago to get me to where I wanted to quit. Like, I was remembering, like, man, not even the broken down 1990 Acura with no AC could have taken me out. Right? Cracked leather. Y'all remember the cracked leather? And you put the seat covers from Walmart, but you still felt the cracks under the thing. You know what I'm talking about? Right? I remember I told you guys my sunroof was jacked up. In the winter it would rain and water would store up, and then when I hit the brakes the water would dump into the car. Not even that could deter my faith. I was like, I'm a missionary of the gospel. Like I loved God. But now all of a sudden 2019 comes and I'm talking to a cheese-filled pretzel saying I'm just gonna work at Disneyland. I don't really want to do ministry anymore. And it's not that anything happened. It wasn't anything. It was just almost like this spiritual fatigue of have you ever felt like you've kind of reached the pinnacle of your faith? Like you feel like I've reached the top, like this is as good as it's gonna get. And that could be the farthest from the truth. That we feel like faith has a ceiling. It actually does not. Faith has no ceiling. What you can actually access in God will take you a quadrillion, bajillion years. That's why the angels continually encircle his throne, because they still are fascinated by this God that sits on the throne. And I feel like in our minds, we really try to picture that. And it's honestly kind of boring because we relate God to things that we understand here on the earth, right? It's like a roller coaster. You're like, oh man, this roller coaster is really hype. You stand in a line for like an hour and you ride for 2 minutes. You're like, maybe that's what heaven's like. I'm going to stand in an hour line, look at God, get right back in the line. It's not like that. You can't compare him to anything that you could even imagine here on the earth. And 2019 was a year I felt like, God, is this calling really worth it? Like, is it worth, when I was younger, it was so easy to pay the price. I remember Banning Liebscher says this. He said, it doesn't impress me when I see a 15-year-old serving God. He said, let me see him when he's 15. Let me see him when he's 25. Let me see that person when they're 35. Let me see him when they're 55. How about when you're 65? What about when you're 75? What about when you're 95? I feel like a lot of us, why our faith has been wavering is we've been riding off of things we did 8, 9, maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. And maybe we had a really good prayer life then, and we read our Bibles a lot then, and then we kind of felt like, I'm good, I'm gonna ride this out as many years as I possibly can. But eventually that stream runs dry. I'm guilty of that. I got convicted this last week I haven't fasted in 4 or 5 years. I hate fasting. And when I started, I failed, and I'm condemned, and I have shame. So I just don't do it. And I'm not one that it goes from like, I'm doing just air. I'm just gonna have air. Water. And then it's like, water and bread. Well, bread with sauce and pepperoni on it. Water, breads, and then pretty soon I'm just full. And then I go like half a day, then I just binge eat. You ever do that? You just go, and then you just binge eat, and you just feel like you're indulging in sin, right? You're like, so I just don't even go there. And this last week, I'm like, man, I haven't fasted in forever. And I felt like the Lord like really spoke to me like, man, like fast, seek my face, return back to the things. I just want to open up my heart for a moment. I was a part of praying and fasting communities for many years. But in those years, I experienced many pains. I experienced many trials. I experienced many hurdles. And what we naturally do is when we're in a season that God is doing something powerfully in our lives spiritually, but you go through rough times physically, we equate the physical pain to the spiritual things you were doing. So all of a sudden, if I'm in a season of fasting and praying, but my life is hell, I equivalent the life of hell to the fasting and praying. So then what happens in the next season that I'm in, I said, I don't want to do anything that I did in that last season. I don't want to read my Bible like that. I don't want to pray like that, because that equals pain. That's where I was for many years. Thinking, man, if I go pray and fast, and the devil's going to get on my back. Because we teach that, right? Like, devil's going to get a target on your back. I don't want a target on my back. I'm just going to do anything, you know. Man, he's a defeated foe. Like, they're not on the same playing level here. And I was remembering what Banning was saying, like, man, what is my heart? I'm 29 years old. I'm going to be 30 years old this year. 30 years. 30 years. Man. But I'm still younger than my wife. No, I was playing. I'm going to be 30 years old. She looks younger than me, though. And all you people who've been running with me for years, don't even talk. You right behind me, okay? Like, 30 years old. But what am I going to be like when I'm 40? When I'm 50? Will I be a jaded old man? Will I be a man that's hurt by ministry, and all of a sudden that festers bitterness in my heart? That's what the devil wants. You know, ministry is actually one of the greatest tools in the hand of the enemy when it's twisted. You know, I meet people all the time. They equate the pain of their life to the ministry, and that's not true. Ministry was meant to be something that's fruitful, that comes out of our lives. And I've learned this last season, like, it's so easy. Can I be honest? It is so, how many of you done ministry before? A lot of you have. Isn't it so easy to love people that you feel are assets until you feel like they're now liabilities? Isn't it easy to love someone that you feel is a blessing until all of a sudden that blessing now requires something of you? Am I the only one that's ever thought that? Yes. Shut up. So dumb. Isn't that crazy? Like, The Church of America is so geared to view people as assets or liabilities instead of viewing people as, man, like you are a brother and a sister. And we're gonna walk this thing out regardless of like hurdles, ups and downs. Like, but can I say this, that now I'm standing in 2020, and though I went through many ups and downs this last year, could I just say this, I didn't quit. You didn't quit. Are any of you guys with me? You didn't quit. You're still here. You're like, well, man, I don't feel like I really was victorious. It doesn't matter. You didn't quit. You didn't bail. You didn't bounce. You didn't say, screw God, or maybe you did, but you cut back on track. Like, you're actually, what you got to understand is when you choose to not quit, you actually are winning. When you choose to not give in to the emotions of what you feel, you actually are winning. And what's crazy is you can look around at other people around you and you don't even know half the stuff they went through in 2019. And my faith this year is stronger. My calling is more clear. God's testing, pruning, and discipline was simply to grow me in areas that I could not understand.